And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
What's going on, RBLR Nation? You are tuning into the relatively new Bandits podcast. Last week we did a little travel around the league and explore the other teams. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, highly recommend jumping over there, listening to that one. And while you're there, there's this little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it makes us feel so much better about ourselves. And by us and ourselves, I mean me, Zach, and the one and only Mr. Yurika. How are you doing today, sir?
Phenomenal job with the intro, and I'm doing phenomenal, man. I mean, come on. We just got 10 new Bandits players last night to go with the 2 days of drafting we had beforehand. Of course, we now know we have the best team in the United States Football League, and I cannot wait to kind of do a little bit of deep dive position by position.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks going up to opening day, which we now know is against Pittsburgh. One of the lesser known teams, I would say. We'll talk about that later on, but today we got a little bit of quarterbacks, running backs, and linebackers, huh?
Yeah, I think it's important that we kind of did our intro show where we kind of listed everyone that was drafted over 2 days, but I think it's going to be important that for someone who, you and I think are just like the listeners here, where we're learning about a lot of these guys for the first time, or maybe it's a guy we heard of from a couple drafts ago that has been bouncing around and kind of been one of these fringe players, but now they're going to have the spotlight on them again. So I think it's good for us to go position by position over the next month up until opening day, where we're going to beat the pants off the Maulers. Let's go, person by person and position by position to give you, the listener, and ourselves a cool little primer on what makes each of these people important, good, bad, and otherwise.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. Like, this is a learning experience for us too. We're this whole thing is new, I think, to everyone. so we're just as uninformed to start as you guys are. So I think that this is going to be a cool little learning experience for all of us, and just we're excited for it.
Yeah, we just have a lot of time on our hands. So
yeah, basically.
We have nothing better to do in our lives than look up Jordan Tamu highlights, right?
Brady White.
Brady White.
We even looked him up. As hard as it was, Yurika looked it up.
I know more about Brady White now than I have known in the history of my life. So
you're not wrong.
Well, let's start with that. Let's get with quarterbacks, with the number one guy we drafted. He was number 2 overall, but that's Jordan Tamu, a guy that has started in the XFL, one of the spring leagues a couple years ago. He did so well in the XFL that he got some tryouts with the Chiefs, but he's kind of bounced around to a few different practice squads in his time. But here's a guy, in 5 games in the XFL for the St. Louis Battlehawks, he threw for over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 101.3 passer rating. The one thing that was funny, him being number 2, the number 1 guy that was picked by Michigan was Shea Patterson, which was the shock. You could pick anybody you want. You pick Shea Patterson. Well, Jordan Tamu was actually the backup to Shea Patterson at Ole Miss. Shea Patterson gets hurt, and then Tamu comes in for the final 5 games, kicks butt, and becomes the starter the next year. If I can go a couple things that I want to talk about, and then I'll hand the ball to you. But I think leadership is his biggest intangible. Jordan Tamu is a guy who carries himself like a leader. This is a guy who has succeeded at this level for sure, and has succeeded in college, but just not able to kind of break that ceiling to get to that NFL level quality. But at this level, I think he's going to have a lot of fun here. What sticks out, good, bad, or otherwise, with Jordan Tamu for you?
So I think what jumps out to me good, like on the good side, is he's got that prototypical size. He's 6'3", 221 pounds, 32 1/4 inch arms, big hands, 9 7/8 inches. He's got the typical size you want at quarterback, and he ran a 4.77 40. at the NFL Combine. So he's not gonna run out of the pocket like Lamar Jackson is, but he's not Tom Brady in the pocket or out of the pocket anyway. Some of the positives that I've seen is his arm strength is phenomenal. And he averaged, and this is in college, but he averaged 9.5 yards per attempt. So I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but, averaging 9.5 yards is almost a first down every time he throws a completion, if you think about it in terms of that. Now, on the flip side of that, he's not very good. And again, this is from draft profiles and stuff. He's not very good at recognizing the counter blitzes, which is obviously going to be a big thing. I think especially in a league like this where he's, people are trying to get jobs in the NFL.
Yeah.
So if you can't pick up a blitz, that's going to be an issue that NFL teams see. He can't pick up a blitz. Why do we want him running our offense?
Right.
And then that's pretty much, aside from like little things like he's prone to big hits when he gets out of the pocket, which depending on how you look at it, from a coach's standpoint and owner's standpoint, they probably don't want their quarterback taking big hits. But as a fan, to me, that shows grit. It shows toughness. But also, you got to make money decisions when it comes to that, Yeah. So that's really the only weaknesses that I see as far as with him.
Yeah, I guess in terms of NFL level, he doesn't have the elite arm strength that you would want in the NFL. But I've seen that he's strong enough to make sideline throws, which in this league there's going to be a lot of those as things break down, or if the offensive line breaks down, you got to check down really quick, or a lot of just kind of quick release throws that I think we're going to see in this offense. But as much as he, quote unquote, doesn't have elite arm strength, he can still chuck it down the field. There's been numerous times, whether the XFL or in Ole Miss, he's got a couple bombs on his resume, no doubt. And for this level, for the USFL, I think that he has top shelf accuracy. Yeah. I think that for this league, he will be one of the best in terms of can you get the ball into the breadbasket of your receivers. Which I hope is going to be a difference maker because some of these receivers might be prone to dropping the ball more than you are used to on Sundays. We're hoping these are the best of the rest, but every player in this league has a but, right? We talked about that on episode number 1. Part of the wonderful thing of this is watching guys build their resumes, get their second chance, and move on. Well, if you're a wide receiver and you've got a quarterback that can get you the rock like right where you need to, it's going to help your game film a lot.
Exactly.
To his knock, the biggest knock I also saw is processing complex defensive schemes. We'll see how that works in the USFL because can a defensive coordinator put together a defensive scheme that's even complex enough other than just like base plus blitz plus man and zone, right? But we'll see in the middle of the year and deeper into the towards the playoff push. Once people have game film and we see people gelling and we see we'll see how this evolves from day one. But that's the but we'll see, and maybe Todd Haley can dial up a lot of things that don't take a lot of progression reads. Don't take a lot of this. It's either you hit 1, you hit 2, or you hit the 9. Boom, let's go.
Exactly, and I think that you nailed it right on the head. Is that his whole team, everyone on this roster has a but, and I think that's why it's important that with guys like him, we're trying to get rid of that but. We're trying to just make it So I think that if he can mentally get out of where he's at, where he can read defenses better, I don't see an issue why he's not at least a backup in the league.
He's trying to get there, and I mean, I don't want to start this on a downer, but maybe this is the level that Jordan Tamu's going to get. So maybe if it's not the USFL, I mean, I hope he saves every dollar he makes here, and it goes well for him in the future. But maybe a CFL job isn't out of the. I mean, maybe there's something like that isn't exactly the NFL. But I hope that he just shows everyone why he was the number one guy picked or the number two guy overall picked, but the first guy that the Bandits picked. Let's take a look though at the very end of the draft of that round. The Bandits picked up another guy that might not be so much of a household name, and that's Brady White out of Memphis. Again, one of the lesser known of the quarterback class here, but I guess I'll start with the good. Okay, there's a lot more buts with Brady White. Okay, he's a pretty accurate quarterback, and I think that's his biggest upside. He was a captain when he was at Memphis. He was the starting quarterback over Paxton Lynch, I believe, when he was there. He's a quality leader, but not a very strong arm at all. Like in terms of NFL, he doesn't have the arm. He can't. He just doesn't. And so if he is playing this year in the USFL, he has to prove that he can make the throws, even at this level, to be honest with you. If I'm just giving you pros and cons, he is a pocket passer exclusively because this dude does not scramble. He is not mobile. If there's a breakdown in the line, it's going to be a sack or it's going to be an incomplete throwaway or something like that because we talk about Tom Brady. This dude was probably born with concrete shoes. He very, very immobile, but that also goes into some of his other deficiencies where he needs a lot of work with feeling the pocket, feeling the presence, and he seems to get trigger happy if there's someone on the blind side or he perceives that there's someone on the blind side. And I don't know if that's just because maybe he's had bad offensive left tackles or something. He keeps hearing footsteps though, and because he's not mobile, the slightest little breakdown means that he's a sitting duck. And the last thing that I'll say is that, even at Memphis, which I'm told kind of dumbs down offensive progression, he didn't have to make a lot of decisions, which, I think we all saw Paxton Lynch kind of benefit from the same offensive scheme. I'm going to dunk on him every time I can. And then he gets the NFL, and that was one of the things he had to work on. Well, Brady White, who didn't have to make a lot of decisions in the Memphis office, when he did have to make decisions, he threw about one interception per game. He had 20 interceptions in 29 starts. So, again, if we're looking at this just at the base level, we got one guy that I think is a star in this league and has proven himself, but we are one player away from having a person who has way more dents in the can, and we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that around Todd Haley, who's been around a lot of really good quarterbacks in his day, we're hoping that he was able to add tools to some of these guys and that he'll be able to coach up Brady White. But there's some upside, but I'm kind of being a downer here because I just want to be real. I just want to be real with everyone about Brady White. I mean, I don't know him. It's not like I've ever had a beer with the guy, but from what I'm seeing, from what I've read, from my consensus that we're putting together, there's way more questions that need to be answered, and I hope that he answers every single one of them. If
exactly. It's kind of funny because it almost feels like he's the exact opposite quarterback, the exact opposite type of quarterback as Jordan is, because everything that Jordan does really good, Brady doesn't. And everything that Brady does decently, Jordan doesn't. So it's kind of weird. I looked up his draft profile while you were talking, and his draft score overall, NFL.com does a draft thing if you guys ever want to look at it. They have scores, and they score between a 5.5 and an 8. So Jordan Tamu scored a 5.40, and Brady White scored a 5.43. So it feels like they're on the same level, just not at the same things.
Yeah, what did you see, or maybe have just read about positives, like good things that you're seeing people like. What are they scoring? In that close to NFL range.
So in this and the strengths for him, tremendous study habits and highly intelligent, able to handle more complex attacks, which was the one thing that Jordan couldn't do. 90 touchdown passes over the last 3 years, but that also one of the things in his weaknesses is the interceptions. So
yeah, right.
Excellent ball handling on play fakes, effective cutting it loose while climbing in the pocket. So basically, like you said, he is a pocket passer. He is not comparing skill wise, but he is basically Tom Brady. And I'm not saying that as talented as Tom Brady. I just mean the same type of quarterback as Tom Brady. Like, he's not going to get out and run a 20-yard rush. Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Like I said, he's got a ball and a chain attached to him.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, you know what might speed him up a little bit is at least if you're not going to run good, you can at least look good, and if you look good, you feel good. So if you get over to shop.rblrsports.com, you could be repping one of these amazing shirts. We have so many cool designs over here that rep all the Tampa Bay teams. RBLR is a Tampa Bay sports network. We cover the Bucks, the Lightning, the Rays, the Rowdies, and of course your Tampa Bay Bandits. If you head over to shop.rblrsports.com, take a look at all the cool designs we have there. If you use the promo code BANDITBALL, BANDITBALL, Bandit Ball, you're going to get 10% off your entire order. So get your butt over there, get yourself a t-shirt. We even put out, there's one for the Lightning. It says with a P, a big P, I'm going to say this, PPP, puck around and find out. It's a pretty cool little, a little aggressive, but that's kind of how we play it here. So
scandalous.
Yeah, so scandalous. So we're nothing but hot takes and bad t-shirts here, guys.
Yeah, you like hot takes, you got to go watch the Rays podcast. I'm telling you.
But let's move on. Zach, I know that there is a running back that you chose. There's two running backs that we'll talk about tonight. I have BJ Emmons, and Zach, who are you bringing to the table today?
So I am bringing us the Juwan Washington. He's going to be interesting. And I say that in terms of he's very fast, but he's also 5'7", depending on what shoes he's wearing. Could be 5'6", according to 24/7 Sports, which is another one of the places that I get my some of my draft stuff from. He is 5'7", 192 pounds.
Yeah, not very big.
Yeah, not very big at all, and that's one of the downsides to him. He was one of those guys that I could not find very much info on. I know that we found one website that had a little more in-depth stuff.
Yeah.
On his, just to go over him a little bit. So he is, like I said, 5'7", 192. His senior year in high school, this man rushed for 2,699 yards and 46 touchdowns.
Wow.
And I know it's high school. Like,
Sure.
The very good athletes are going to look even better in high school. But he went to San Diego State, and over 3 years of being a starter, kind of ironic, he rushed again for 2,699 yards. And this is over his whole career.
Sure.
25 touchdowns, 284 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns.
Okay.
So to go into positives with him, I think he is the kind of running back that we can run you don't hear it much when you talk about running backs, but a dual threat. That's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Okay.
He's going to be able to catch the ball, and he's going to be able to run the ball. The issue is that he has to be able to run the ball outside. He's not going to do very much up the middle at 5'7", 190 pounds. He's not going to be your power back.
Got it.
But again, that's not a bad thing. If we're running a fast offense, which it seems that's what, looking at all of our weapons, it appears as we're going to be a more fast-paced offense.
Yeah. So
I think he's going to fit in that role perfect. It's just going to depend on how often we use the running back that you're going to talk about in a little bit. I feel that he can be a difference maker on offense, but also in the return game, which is what I think is more likely to happen. I could see him being our go-to return guy.
Okay.
Because he has experience in that as well.
Okay, so I'm kind of thinking, is it along the lines of like a Darren Sproles kind of guy, like change of pace meets like he's like a receiver that's 5'9", but also is like a tailback,
So I'll bring it into. I don't want to give him too much hype and say Darren Sproles because Darren Sproles is one of the best.
Agreed.
The best lesser known
Agreed.
running backs. I'll go a little, and again, you guys are going to hear it all the time because I'm a huge Oregon State fan. Do you remember Jaquise Rogers?
I do.
Okay, so Jaquise Rogers, where he's a smaller guy, relatively quick. You're not going to see him breaking 15 tackles he's not going to be beast mode Marshawn Lynch or anything, but he can get out, and it's not like he's bad at taking contact. Like, he can take contact, but you're just not going to see him dragging people, kind of a deal. So, Darren Sproles, but to a lesser degree. So I'll go with, like, a Jaquise Rogers.
Okay. I mean, well, Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans will know that name.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Okay, so I dig that. Yeah, you alluded to it, but the other running back we're going to talk about is B.J. Emmons, who was the first running back drafted by your Tampa Bay Bandits. And we talked about this on the first episode. Todd Haley, in my research, he picks one guy, and he rides that one guy for 80 to 90% of the carries. It isn't a running back by committee. It's like I said, let's talk to Le'Veon Bell if you want to know how much you're going to touch the ball if you're the running back for his offense. And that's who I want to talk about because BJ is a hard, physical runner. I mean, this is a dude who was a former big-time high school recruit. He went to Alabama. He was recruited to Alabama right out of high school as like one of the top prospects in the entire country. However, at Alabama, injuries and just kind of you're at Alabama, so there's always another crop of like really good guys that are always coming in. So eventually, better players show up, and you kind of like if you don't get your chance, you got to get your chance and take hold of it because there's always someone coming after you. But here's a dude that now injuries might have changed a little bit of this, but at the time he ran a 4.59 40, which isn't blistering speed, but it's quick. Especially at this level, he had a really good like the shuttle and three cone. I think are just agile things to show more of what he can do as a running back. He had a 4.14 shuttle and a 6.89 three cone, which is really good for that position. So he has quality movement. Again, speed might be not as much as it once was because of like nagging leg and foot injuries. But this is a dude who gives maximum effort. He's a guy who's going to put his head down, get the extra yard. He doesn't go down easily on first contact. And I think that makes up for the fact that since we're not going to see these like long gains, we're not going to see 60-yard beast mode things. But he can definitely make one or two guys miss. And then on top of that, he's a really good blocker. So like if Todd Haley wanted to only have one guy back there in the backfield that can get extra yards, can block on passing, which is going to be more passing than running anyway in this offense, in my opinion. I think they picked, according to everything I've seen and read, they picked a really good person that fits that prototypical mold that I've been thinking of. Was there anything you saw on BJ?
So I didn't necessarily do a deep dive on him quite yet.
Sure.
But I will say that I do think he's going to be the go-to back for the Bandits, and I think that's why in my review of Washington was that I think he's going to be a bigger role in the return game and in the passing game because, like you said, B.J. Emmons, he is a blocker. Like he can probably one of the best pass blocking running backs that were available in the draft.
Okay.
So I've seen tape on him, but I didn't do a deep dive. But I think that you nailed it on the head when you said like, if Todd Haley goes with one of those guys that gets 80% of the run of the plays, it's gonna be him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one question mark is he too slow, right? I mean, again, until we see it, but like he hasn't been able to break through because of some of these injuries and because of some of the after effects of those things. But in terms of playing football, it seems like, yeah, he might not run a 4.40 or whatever anymore, but in terms of playing football, making blocks, having a high motor, getting that extra yard, doing that dirty work, that's what this league is going to be about.
Exactly.
You have 11 hungry dudes on the other end coming to rip your head off, and it seems like he's a dude that wants to hit you just as hard as you hit him. So that's encouraging. I think that's man. I'm all about them. Bringing the lunch pail and let's go. Get your 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and every once in a while you juke a dude and get 9-10 yards. Let's go. I'm all about that, especially because you need some sort of. I mean, you need the run game. Otherwise, you're just going to go 5 wide, and they know what you're going to do, and then you're saying, okay, can Jordan Tamu beat our scheme? No, you need to have a BJ Emmons to be the tip of the spear that you just grind out whatever you can. So,
yeah, and so do you have like a player that you would compare him to, or? And I know I kind of put you on the spot there because I have one in mind. I'm looking up the stats real quick to make sure that I'm not completely off.
No, I mean off the top, I mean it's. No, who did you have? No, I don't have, I'm trying to think of someone that would be comparable, but
Tampa fans might know him because he played for Atlanta last year, but their running back, I want to say his name is Mike Davis.
Okay.
I want to verify that, but his last name is definitely Davis, and he played for Atlanta last year, and I would imagine that the 40 time is probably relatively close, and he's kind of like a power back, but not a power back. Like it's kind of hard to explain.
You talking about Mike Davis?
Mike Davis, yeah.
I mean, well, because Mike Davis is a dude that might get like 9-10 carries, maybe 50 yards, but also get like 5 in the air for another 30-40. But if it's 3rd and 1, you're going to give it to him, because he's just going to be big and pull you over. So I could see that. I mean, physical. That's the big thing that I can tell you about him. Is that other than being not quick and having a few injuries in his past, those are the only real knocks on this dude as a football player. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty excited about that. At this level, it's like if he has raw tools that we can utilize, let's go. But speaking of dudes who are like mean and nasty, and it was someone that you've admired for a long, long time. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. Let's talk about one of those 11 hungry defensive guys that want to rip your face off. Let's talk about a guy that you have finally get to root for.
Exactly. So me and Mr. Christian Sam, it's been a love-hate relationship. A hate-love, I would say, because earlier I alluded to it, and I've alluded to it in multiple episodes. I am a diehard Oregon State fan.
No way.
Yep, diehard. I know it's probably a shock to you guys. First time you're ever hearing it. Mr. Christian Sam played at Arizona State, who is also in the Pac-12, and he was there when Oregon State was not a good team. Not that they're a good team now, but still. So Christian Sam came out of Allen High School in Allen, Texas, weighing 6'2", 240 pounds. His career as a Sun Devil, he was a 3-star recruit. In his career as a Sun Devil, he had 240 total tackles, 17 of those for loss, 7 sacks, 3 interceptions, and that was in 3 seasons. I believe it was his junior year. He got hurt in the first game of the season, and he ended up having a redshirt season. So he was just all over the place. It was never something like he was never in the wrong place, it felt like. Every time he would get a tackle, or every time someone would be tackled for Oregon State, it felt like it was Christian Sam was involved in it somehow. Mm-hmm. And it was just the most annoying thing in the world. So he came out of that and ended up getting drafted in the 6th round, number 178 overall by the New England Patriots. So I had to start loving him because my dad's a huge Patriots fan.
Right.
Had to start loving him.
Yeah.
So he never got his shot in a regular season game, but even in the preseason, he looked very solid. It just kind of looked like felt like he didn't necessarily belong. I know it's weird to say it that way, but it felt like he just didn't grasp the concept of these guys are much faster than some of the college kids, and especially playing in the Pac-12 is not the strongest conference in the world. So when he gets to New England, he just didn't kind of fit the scheme. It felt like that New England was trying to run, but at the combine, he did. And again, I'm going to go over to the prospect grade. He had a 5.90 prospect grade, and that turns out on the scale is a 5.90 would be an average backup or special teamer. And the way that I think that he is, it doesn't appear that he's okay with being a backup. It's like he wants to be that starter. He wants to be that guy. So I think that this is the perfect place for him to be in terms of getting that confidence that he needs and maybe learning some new things so where he can fit in better as a backup and be able to fill that starting role if he needs to in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he's a guy that has at least one more shot? Like if everything goes well, that like we're hoping, and he turns into a star linebacker, do you think this is a guy who has the ceiling to be in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he could be an NFL player. Do I think he's going to be a Ray Lewis or a Terrell Suggs? No, I don't envision him being this all-pro or even a Pro Bowl linebacker at the NFL level.
Yeah,
I look at it more of, and not by like the way they play or anything, but look at it more like Leighton Vander Esch, who had one really good season, and now everyone is not as high as they were on him his rookie year. Right. But I don't even think he'd be as good as Leighton Vander Esch. I think he's going to be like the draft grade said. I agree with that 100%. I think he'll be a backup who maybe 3 or 4 games a season has some game-changing tackle or a game-changing sack. I just don't think that he's ever going to be the go-to starter because he's not. I don't think he has one thing that he does very good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the knock on him is he's decent at all of it, but he's not really good at any of it.
Okay. Yeah, transitioning to my guy, I'm going to talk about Emmanuel Beal, who's a linebacker here. So Sam is more of a interior linebacker, where Emmanuel Beal and the next guy that I'll talk about after him, they're both outside linebackers. So this is a completely different skill set. I mean, so you've got Sam in the middle, which I think is like a really good, from what you're saying, this guy that's got a lot of pedigree, had some good coaching in his background. We're pairing that with Emmanuel Beal, who, if there's one thing I want to say, it's about quickness, it's about speed. Emmanuel Beal's a 6 foot, 225 guy, so a little undersized, but has picked up a little bit, even from 225. I think he's picked up a little bit more weight since then. According to a couple scouts, maybe too much weight, and he maybe needs to lean down a little bit. But here's a guy who can run a 4.59 40, a former XFL Tampa Bay Viper, and a guy that, I mean, if you talk about pedigree, when he played, he's an all honorable mention all Big 12 selection by the coaches of that out of Oklahoma. So, I mean, he's playing at a big school. He's got that pedigree, was very highly recruited. And, I mean, I guess he's using his quickness to cover both tight ends and running backs. I mean, here's a guy that you throw out in coverage. And you know, maybe you send him on the edge or something a couple times, but really you're in this day and age with all these passing routes, this is an outside linebacker that you want to be covering the running back coming out or the linebacker coming up a seam or a slot receiver over the middle in a zone. He's got a very solid stance, a very solid technique there. He stays at home really well. He has natural instincts about where the play is developing. He anticipates that route coming in, and that's why I keep saying, like, coverage to me is his forte. Or at least if I were game planning it, that's where I would be putting him. We still don't know who the defensive coordinator is for the Bandits. We have no idea about what defensive scheme we're going to run. Because we have a few edge guys, we have a few outside linebackers, we got some interior guys. So really, there's nothing that. We have a lot of D-backs, but guess what? You're going to have 5 wide sets, 4 wide sets the entire time. So none of that really belies where we're going to be putting pieces. But Emmanuel Beal seems like a perfect fit for an outside linebacker that's more of a coverage linebacker, either on the weak side or on the opposite side from where you're blitzing. The one knock on Emmanuel Beal, I guess I would say, is because quickness is his one thing, if he does happen to get beat, and because he does have really good technique, I think he kind of shuffles his feet and he goes side to side a lot of times. And so there are particular routes that you can like basically decoy him away, or if he just gets straight up beat off the line by a quicker guy, he doesn't recover as well as you would want for the NFL. So he does get a little bit of a downside with recovering if he gets beat, but he usually is quick enough to make that gap. But it is one of the knocks on him.
Yeah, and I know that you know of him from the Vipers, so that was one of the reasons why I was kind of keen on you going over him, because you've kind of experienced him play more than I have.
Yeah.
Is there anyone, again, I'll go a little bit of a not necessarily comparison, but is there someone like, or a level at the NFL that you could see him playing at?
I don't think, look, I don't want to be a downer here, but like, you would love to say, wow, you just said everything like, that's what Devin White sounds like, right? Like,
exactly.
And it's like, well, let's take it down a notch. He's, again, in the NFL, the speed is just, everyone is so quick that, like, if you get beat for one little step, that's a 5-yard window you just opened up, and if your quarterback can thread that needle, you're going to get beat every time. You're just going to get beat. At this level, though, I think he's going to be, like, as an impactful guy as your better coverage linebackers. But on the NFL level, again, it's just these little tiny differences that make up a huge gap. It's like F1 racing. Like a quarter of a second is a lifetime, and that's what happens with guys like this that aren't the biggest, they aren't the necessarily fastest, but they're fast enough to make an impact. At this level, it's going to be great. And hey, I mean, who knows? Maybe he comes out, maybe he's bulked up, maybe he can play a little bit more of an edge kind of player, or a gap filler or something like that. That can also sometimes cover guys. I mean, we'll see what he turns into in this league. But so far, that's been the prototype. But so yeah, to be honest with you, I don't think he's going to make the NFL.
Hey, that's fair though, and like you said, we're not experts at this, so we could be way off.
I hope
this
so.
guy could
wrong.
Be a Hall of Famer in the future.
Let's go.
Don't mark that down as something Zach said, because I don't think so. But I'm telling you, it's possible.
Yeah.
And to go over, another guy that even I don't know much about, and which is surprising, because I just realized everyone that I've gone over today has been a West Coast team in college. Every one of them was on the West Coast. And you gave me another Pac-12 guy.
Yep.
Which super thankful for that.
There's a method to my madness.
I can see it now. But this guy, so I'm going to go over everything I got.
Okay.
He was actually one of the guys that was drafted in the supplemental draft last night. So we didn't even know about him until around 9:00 last night.
Agreed.
Which, if you're ever interested in just learning about all these guys, our Twitter has everything you could ever need to know about where they were drafted in the USFL and all of that. And that's just at RBLR Bandits on Twitter. So if you go follow that, you'll know pretty much as we know at this point.
It's a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go over Mr. Travis Feeney out of the University of Washington. Dang Huskies. So he was another 3-star recruit coming in at 6'4", 230 pounds to Washington. He was actually recruited to play safety. But as you know, 6'4", 230 pounds is a very big safety. Abnormally large safety.
It's a big dude.
And he ran a 4.5 40, so not quite fast enough to play safety.
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit before the show started. He's a very fast linebacker and a little bit below average safety in speed. So I think that him switching to outside linebacker was kind of basically destined to happen.
Okay.
And over his 38 games that he played at Washington, he had 187 tackles, 28.5 tackles for a loss, 14.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Now, the interceptions, I feel like even 2 is being gracious with him because they were both in his first year playing in college in 2012. So had 2 his whole career. They were both in his first season.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to – it's kind of the opposite of what you said about Beal, how he's a coverage guy. I think, weirdly enough, even though Feeney played safety, I feel like he's big enough and quick enough that he plays a better speed rusher role.
Okay.
And to compare him to someone in the NFL, before I go a little more into it, it's going to be a fellow Washington guy who also ironically plays for the Bucks. But Joe Tryon, I don't even want to Shoyanka.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to get very much out of him in coverage, but he is a speed rusher and he's going to get it done.
Absolutely.
Like whatever it takes.
Okay.
So some of the positives on him is he's competitive, very competitive and aggressive, but not aggressive to the point where you're going to get penalties on him. And he's very, again, rangy, so he's quick. He's a sure tackler who's going to get to where he needs to be. And that also, to kind of counteract my point, kind of play devil's advocate with not putting him in coverage, he does have the speed that if he needs to be in coverage, he can very easily cover the tight end out of the, a tight end or maybe a running back out of the backfield if he's in the flats. If your running back takes him a deep route, you're not going to see Feeney staying up with him.
All right. Yeah.
And see, Lil Man agrees with me.
Yeah, he's it's a little past his bedtime.
Oh yeah.
But little Valtteri in the back there. But my last guy, I gave you the West Coast guy because I wanted to keep the USF Bull to myself.
Yeah, I knew it.
Go Bulls, baby! All that Oregon State Beaver talk, we're shutting that down. No. But here's that one guy, one of the 2 USF Bulls that were drafted into the United States Football League. But Greg Reeves, a guy who's from Florida, raised in Bradenton, played USF. Now he's playing professional football for the Tampa Bay Bandits. It's just a shame that it's in Birmingham and not actually here in Tampa. But
2 seasons.
Hey, we'll figure that out. But Greg Reeves is a guy who, I mean, look, he not very. You had said for the couple of the guys here, like he doesn't do one thing amazingly well, but he does just enough at a few different areas of the defense that he's got a spot on this team. The story of this guy from the beginning, he was a walk-on at USF. He earned a scholarship to play as a defensive end who he racked up, double-digit tackle for losses as a Bull at the defensive end. But then as recruits were coming in, he transitioned to middle linebacker because, there were some injuries on the team, and so he had to actually fill a completely different role for the Bulls. And all he did was suck up a bunch of tackles and even added more tackles for loss. So I mean, he can play D-end, he can play middle linebacker, but he's been drafted kind of as an outside linebacker is where they've said he's being drafted to, because he can stand up on the outside and play like a blitzing linebacker. He can play in the middle. if it's a 4-3 or a 3-4 or some kind of like weird amalgamation of those, depending on who your personnel is, he can play a lot of these positions. Do I think he's a starter at any of these positions? I mean, time will tell, but it's definitely one of these things as USFL, you're not going to have, I mean, I doubt they're going to have 53, 60 guys on the roster, or even more than that. So you're going to have guys that are able to play some multiple positions. You're going to have guys that can have just another tool in that Swiss Army knife, so that wherever the defensive coordinator wants to put you, or, I mean, we're going to see, this is such a exciting league, because right now we have 8 different teams that might play 8 different styles of football, let alone just have a weird roster. We're seeing a little bit on how they're drafting, but with a Greg Reeves, like, if you need more of a, you need more on the defensive line side, you can have that as a good back guy. If there's rotation that's needed at any of these positions, we'll get into D-end and edge and stuff like that later on as we march towards the beginning of the season. But Greg Reeves, I think, is a name that you have to think that he can play D-end, he can play edge, he can play interior and outside linebacker. So for me, that's his biggest trait, is that he can do a lot of little things. But and hopefully you're just filling the gap or stopping the gap if there's an injury or a natural kind of a rotation in the lineup. So
so what I'm gathering from this, and the more that I'm thinking about it, this is something that just popped in my head as we're sitting here talking.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll go over our D-line at another date.
Correct.
Probably in a couple of weeks. But it looks to me like our linebackers were set up to run a 3-4.
I think so too.
And we'll put Reeves and Sam in the middle, and then have Beal and Feeney on the outside. And I think that we're going to be a very, very fast linebacker core.
Well, they might run a 4-3, but more of like just 2 nose tackles with 2 edge rushers, and then you have even more linebackers with maybe you've got a Reeves kind of being like an interior linebacker that's really always shifting out into coverage or shifting out into if you have we'll get into edge rushers, but if there's a couple of these guys that aren't just like pin their ears back and rush every single time, maybe there's a couple of these guys that you can do some nice little befuddled things where you send an edge into coverage, and you're sending Reeves or you're sending Beal, a speedster. You're stunting from multiple different angles. That's kind of what I saw with this, is like they're versatile. It isn't just like they play one position, they do one thing really well. It's kind of like you're giving a D coordinator like so many different weapons and tools, and you're basically like letting them be a madman figuring out how they want to like inflict pain on the offense.
I see you out here playing Wordle with the word befuddled. I see what you got going on.
I too dabble in a thesaurus from time to time.
But I don't disagree with you, and that's why I'm excited to see what they end up doing, because like I said before, I see them running the 3-4, but when you say 4-3, it makes perfect sense. Like, I don't think there's a way that they can go wrong in their defensive scheme with the linebackers that they have.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like, again, you like if you look at some of these teams that are the way they're drafting, you have some teams that are literally looking like old school Big Ten, like fullbacks in the formation, like going to run power I. And then you have other teams, that might be more similar to us, where we're thinking it's going to be spread them out, and I mean, cause Paxton Lynch might be a starting quarterback in this league, and you're definitely
let's not go too far.
You're definitely not going to put him under center. You're put 5 wide, bunch formations, and make it as easy as possible. So
you're going to put him on the bench, is what you're going to do.
Hey, maybe. His he might have arm accuracy and speed to throw it from the seated bench position. But we'll get into that. So next week, we're going to actually talk about a lot of the passing game, because we're going to get into wide receivers and tight ends next week. We have 9 guys as of right now to talk about. So that's going to be fun, because that's what I think that's what we're going to be. We're going to be an air it out, like Todd Haley, Texas Tech meets like, you know, the Steelers offense of a few years ago, where it's just like we're throwing it all the time. Jordan, we got the right quarterback to do that, a guy we talked about today. So that's going to be interesting. So we got 9 wide receivers and tight ends to talk about next week. But before we go, is there any final words you want to say before we get out of here, man?
Basically, I just want to tell you guys I will cover someone from the East Coast next week.
Nope.
I promise.
The Badger Cast. That's all it is.
Aside from that, though, no, we can't thank you guys enough. Obviously, this takes just as much time out of your day as it does for us. So we appreciate you guys for listening and hopefully subscribing and commenting. Let us know if you want us to do something different, what you like, what you dislike. We're always here for the constructive criticism. Just don't be a jerk. But yeah, just go give us a follow on Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. We're on. And like we said, we enjoy doing this for you guys just as much as you guys enjoy listening to it. Aside from that, that's pretty much everything.
Yeah, and one more thing, on all forms of social media, if you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, we are part of the RBLR Sports Network. You can follow at RBLR Sports and us specifically at RBLR Bandits. Join the almost 100 people that have followed us on social media. It's a good time. We're gonna start kind of reaching out to some of these other Bandit Ball podcasts and things like that. I mean, you might see some guests here and there. There's a lot of guys to get into, a lot of time to break these down, so that by the 17th of March, of April. Sorry. Oh my God. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, that's 6 days from now.
I was like, wow, that's very fast.
I was absolutely wrong. So by week 1 against Pittsburgh, you will have spent a little bit of time over the last month getting to know each and every one of these guys as we get our journey towards Bandit Ball. So from all of us here at RBLR Sports, for Zach Blaine, my man, my name is Yurika. We are here for the Bandits. Let's go. Get excited. It's about a month, about 5 weeks away, I think, until we get to break down the Pittsburgh Maulers. Can you feel it, Bandit Nation? Let's go. And we'll see you next week. Go Bandits.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.